I was hospitalized recently myself, and I was observing all this as a patient. And I often asked myself, what is done for what is so common, and you're relating or referring now to the poverty in this country, which is incredible. What is done in psychiatric, psychological treatment? Because many of these, including this fellow that you referred to, might be terribly depressed and therefore go to you for help. But what they would need, in my understanding, would be a system of healthcare that would provide for people who are psychologically in need. Is that one of the problems?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Talk about the man who came to you for a grant.
Yeah.
I don't think antidepressants, I mean, he might well have been depressed, but my feeling is
his need was much more around, how do I feed my children? No, I think it was more fundamental than that. It was, I'm hungry, my children are hungry.
If I were hungry, I would be horribly depressed.
Yeah, I mean, I get your point. But I mean, a lot of the time, people, survival issues, people are a reality for many people in this country, and that's something that medicine really can't do very much about. Yeah.
Thank you for writing the book.
Sure.
I completely empathize with the feeling of being disillusioned and hopeless during my internship and community service. But that was 7 years ago, and I've since learned that actually that feeling is quite common. And it seems like a rite of passage. If you're not depressed, you weren't doing it right.
Sure.
So my question is, do you have any ideas or interest in how do we support junior doctors, what now?
I mean, I think we start by talking, but also by not accepting that it's a rite of passage. It can't be, we need to say no. It's not healthy. The responsibility of supporting the health of other people requires people who are themselves healthy. Just some of the emails that I've had, people saying that you get to a point where you don't care anymore. Because that's what happens when you're traumatized and disillusioned. You don't care anymore. But patients are coming to you, they want you to care, they need you to care. So, I think we need to start saying this is not okay. This culture of do the hours. Everyone's always done it, and it must just continue. I mean, I hear that was the response of the health minister last week on the radio, saying, "Well, I did it, so you guys must too." That's not right.
Hi, we're final year students at the University of Stellenbosch, and so we're obviously a little bit nervous to go out to the world and do our internship in community service, because we hear stories about it and obviously we haven't experienced it yet. So a little bit of advice on how we can approach this without getting depressed and sort of overwhelmed by the situation in the country.
Well, you're asking the wrong person. I mean, maybe someone who did this successfully. You tell me.
I think. Sorry, just hang on 1 second.
I think first thing is that thanks for writing the book, and thanks for really making it and then going through with it. I think you struck a chord with a lot of us who ultimately also ran away from the profession. It's been at least 4 years for me, but Bonga next to me is still pushing it. To the final students, it's not all that bad, especially in your junior years. I think the best advice that someone gave me and I followed is, don't spend your junior years in the big academic hospital. Go to the Bundes. That's where you'll feel a sense of great satisfaction by helping people who would otherwise be doctorless without you. So after your internship, head out to Eastern Cape. There are nice hospitals close to the beaches there in the West. Head out to KZN, head out to Limpopo. You will have the best 2 years of your life, and then you can come back to the big city life and start specializing if you want to, or venture into the corporate world, because I've decided to go corporate, working for medical aids. There are pharmaceuticals, they still need doctors, it's still within the healthcare, but not necessarily treating patients. But for your junior years, go out to the Bundes. Don't spend time in the cities. Thank you.
Yeah, Maria, thanks for your book. I just want to note that it was written by a woman and not a man, and that as a woman, feeling these things and being able to express them has been really important. But I want to ask, do you feel that at UCT you were, what can I say, miseducated, in that your expectations as a result of your training, there was such a mismatch between that coming out of Krutskia and the harsh realities of rural, wherever you ended up, that the educational process could have been different and could have helped to mitigate that shock and eventual burnout in a harsh health system. That if you'd been prepared for it better, and then that had been part of the educational process to prepare you for it, that it might have been a different path.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, the training at UCT was obviously very good, but a lot of the time the conversation, particularly when we got to 5th year, 6th year, with my peers was always, what can I do with this from an international perspective? I can go to the UK, so I think we were trained to be international doctors and not necessarily South African doctors.
I also really would like to support that plea to go to the rural areas. I think it's fantastic to go where the need is most. What concerns me is that, reading reports of and speaking to people who, I heard about 3 people doing their community service who reopened a hospital. 3 junior doctors reopened a hospital with no supervision. They had to use their private cars as an ambulance. This is all fantastic, but it's also horrifying that people with not enough experience are really put at the rock face, and they do things trying to do their best, often exhausted. Looking, while they're doing the operation, you're looking up in the textbook. And then people die. And then you've got to sit with that the rest of your life. That you tried your best. I mean, even at Krutskia this happened to me, you do your best, but the registrar is not on lunch, and this person dies in front of you, and you sit with that the rest of your life. And I think that's really unfair, I mean, particularly when there's nobody else. So I'm still wanting to hear about what your comments on resilience, Steve, in the face of that.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
So I'm not a doctor, but I'm a therapist, and a large majority of my patients are medical students and registrars.
Wow.
And so my question for you would be, you're in training, do you think there's enough support for doctors to actually work through the evaluative process, so they are being watched all the time, the workload is intense, and they're dealing with people? Do you think that universities could do more to support young doctors in their training, that's even before they leave, to become more resilient?
Well, certainly when I was training, there wasn't that support. But in terms of being at medical school, that's very different from real life. It's a nice little cocoon where you're all studying wonderful things. I think real life starts after you graduate. And there, I mean, I remember when I was at USTA, we were told during one on-call, there's a service available at UCT if you want to speak to someone, if you're having a rough time. And part of what was there for me is, okay, well, if I go and speak to someone, there are 4 of us on call, working a 12-hour shift, and it's chaos at USTA. And then I leave my colleagues. No, okay, soldier on. So I mean, the onus was on me, obviously, to seek help, and the onus is on doctors to seek help. But at the same time, it isn't always easy to do that. There's work to be done.
Come to you in a sec.
Maria, thank you very much for writing your book. I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Thank you.
But for the last 4 years, I've been facilitating workshops at UCT around these issues. And the message that has really come through strongly from the students is it's so valuable hearing each other's stories, that we're not in it alone. So I really think your book should become a compulsory read for our students. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to find out whether the admission criteria for medicine, whether it's focused purely on academic achievement and whether there is any psychological profiling. Because with, say, for example, elite sportsmen, they have got a certain psychological profile where they just don't crack under pressure. And whether there is a place for some kind of psychological screening, or is that person suitable, though he may have a big brain, but maybe he doesn't have the personality for it.
At the time, this was obviously some years ago. I mean, we didn't even have interviews, never mind an assessment. At UCT, there were no interviews. And sometimes, you think back at some of the people that I studied with, that even just the simple act of having an interview system to assess people. But it's also not, the idea of cracking under pressure. Someone said to me the other day, maybe they should put junior doctors, before you go out into the field, put them through a survivor type experience. But that, for me, that misses the mark. That's not what doctors are there to do. It shouldn't be about surviving. Doctors are there to heal. They should be thriving in their environment and being supported to thrive.
And this, in the end, you mustn't forget, this is also about the patients.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, what patient wants a doctor who hasn't slept for 30 hours operating on them? I mean, none of us want that.
Ricky.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
It's so nice to see you after all the years. I was in med school with Maria many years ago. I had a few comments, and I think I wanted to just point them out or mention them. The one was very much the time period in which we qualified and the first few years we were working, which I think many of our colleagues will, attest to, that it was really the era of hopelessness around HIV and AIDS. And I mean, I chose to go to a rural hospital for my community service, and it was a small hospital, and we had about 2 to 3 people dying every day. And it was the time when the health minister was saying there was no link between HIV and AIDS, and we weren't allowed physically to give out the ARVs that were becoming available. So it was incredibly frustrating, the amount of death we were dealing with in a society, in a time when we knew it was preventable. And I think that really does contribute to the kind of stresses that doctors were under, and it is getting better to some extent. And the second thing is that junior doctors are really used for service delivery in this country at such a big level, and that's why these junior doctors reopen hospitals, and the working hours are terrible. Having worked in New Zealand and in the UK, they very much protect junior doctors' time, a certain amount every week for mentorship and for protected teaching, and that is, it's sacred time. So if we can work towards that, I don't think we're anywhere close to that because the need is so great. But I think it comes from having senior doctors who are prepared to mentor, senior doctors who are prepared to take the responsibility for service delivery and not sit in offices, and that the junior doctors are really protected from being the drivers of the health service at that point. About rural hospitals, I was very lucky to go to a fantastic ex-mission hospital in northern KwaZulu-Natal, and my superintendent had started 3 or 4 community-run programs that were dealing with socioeconomic issues in the community, like sanitation and about housing and electricity, and it was absolutely tangible, the effect that it had on the health of the community, in the sense that we had some of the lowest statistics for the cholera epidemic during that time, and it was really amazing to see the effect of the socioeconomic change in a small community on the health of the population. And so that kind of thing was inspiring, and it really inspired me. And I think just the last comment was just, I mean, we're losing doctors, we're hemorrhaging doctors into private sector. I speak for myself. I left public sector work to work in general practice, mostly because I love to connect with patients, and I wasn't really finding time to connect with patients in the public sector at the level that I wanted to. And I love being a GP. And the other thing is people leave to go overseas because the working conditions are better. And I think it's quite sad.
Yeah, very sad.
But thank you for your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's lovely to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
I wasn't planning this. Why don't you bring up it's going to exercise.
Just a quick question following on that one. In the absence of she whose name shall not be mentioned, what are your feelings about the present, I don't know if you're still going to be Minister of Health, but did you notice some kind of improvement or optimism while Motsoaledi took over?
Well, I mean, I think probably the most important difference with him is that he's not denying that there's a crisis in healthcare. You know, we came from, you know, the Mbeki Shabalala Msimang period, which caused an enormous amount of damage. You know, so already we were, you know, after the legacy of apartheid and all of those challenges, to then have a health minister and a president, particularly around HIV, all of that denial, that set us back many, many years. But I get the sense with Minister Motsoaledi that he's at least not denying that the change needs to happen, and that there's a deep crisis in the health sector. So I'm optimistic with him.
Hi Maria.
Hi.
As an artist, I've always had the greatest respect for writers, you know, being able to evoke emotion through writing. And I also come from the pre-hospital environment, and I just wanted to say that your story sounds just like mine, even though I'm not a doctor and I didn't spend 9 years studying. I know what you're feeling, you know, and this is a problem that is not just with doctors. This is with everyone who reaches patients before doctors.
Sure.
And thanks for outing it,
Okay.
and thanks for, you know, expressing what I feel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you a question. Unfortunately, I haven't read your book yet, and I will be reading it. About your experiences, can you tell us a little bit about gender and race, and you know what you went through as a black female doctor, a young black female doctor? Did that have any experiences? Did that have any influences in what happened to your story, basically, at UCT or when you worked as a doctor?
That's a difficult question to answer because my whole life I experienced as a black female. But there's an incident that I talk about, that I write about in the book when I was a 5th year medical student, where I was at during our primary healthcare rotation, and I was at one of the local community health centres, and a patient essentially made a pass at me. And I remember feeling quite violated, because the whole idea of the block, of the rotation, was that, traditionally the doctor-patient relationship had always been doctor knows best and patient you do as I say. And part of what the intention of this particular rotation was around teaching us to build a partnership, a therapeutic partnership with patients. And so I was doing this, as an enthusiastic student, doing my thing in terms of trying to build a therapeutic partnership, and to then find that in trying to connect, I inadvertently caused or helped to cause.
You thought you were flirting with him?
I don't know what he thought, but he certainly made advances. And a part of me felt that, the white coat, I needed to keep the white coat on to protect myself. That there needed to be some kind of barrier between me and my patients. So I mean that was certainly what stood out for me. But other than that, and as a black student and a black doctor, no, I think it was more wanting to make a difference to my people, but at the same time feeling that I was failing. I wasn't doing that.
Hi Maria.
Hi.
I'm just interested in how's your quality of life right now? Where's your happiness index? Because often we say it's very high. Because I think it's just the social ill. Because you think once internship ends, community service will get better. Once community service ends, when you're an MO, you're older, you're more senior, it gets better. But the hierarchy never ends. So I'm just interested in terms of, like, as a person who now left the field, firstly, how's your happiness index? Has your life improved? Or was it just maybe an illusion that it's the doctor thing that's just killing your morale? That's number one. And number two, do you maybe think, just also as a young professional, and maybe not so much in the medical field, but do you think that in general in the tertiary institutions they should be leaning more on teaching us social skills and how to handle the community and the social ills we're facing, rather than the pathology, more pathology they teach us in the universities, and more of the scientific and very textbook stuff? Because I know we get very overwhelmed when we're out there and we're starting, and not because we don't know the work or we don't know the pathology, but rather we're not taught how to handle the people and the societies that we work in. Just those two questions.
The first question was around, am I happy? Yes. But I needed to create my own happiness. So that started with recognizing that I wasn't happy, taking a very, very difficult step, leaving something that was a dream for me, a dream career. So for a long time I wasn't happy. For a long time I felt guilty and shame and lost. But I've had to do a lot of work, a lot of inner work, to get to a point where I can say I'm happy. So I think, the approach that says, well, internship is hard, maybe it'll get better in community service, oh, maybe when I'm in MO, I think the work needs to be ongoing. The reflection and the self-nurturing needs to be ongoing, because if you soldier through the early years in the hope that, oh, I'll be happy when I'm a specialist, by then you will have lost the capacity to be happy. So you need to keep yourself open, keep yourself healthy in your heart. And then the second question was around, are we adequately, so we know the pathology, but do we know the reality? No, I mean, I certainly didn't. And again, I think that was part of the big frustration for me, that the reality was so out of sync with what I had expected. I don't know if I've answered your second question adequately. But perhaps that's not really the responsibility alone of medical school. Perhaps then medical health faculty should be working more closely with, giving medical students a greater understanding of the social realities and economic realities, so that they are not being educated in a vacuum. I think that is very, very important.
Maria, I wanted to ask them, I'm interested in your, almost kind of where you are at the moment in relation to this, because it strikes me as possibly a little bit odd, certainly interesting, that you've written this book, which in part anyway is about, it's called Postmortem, and it's about you conducting a postmortem into your own experiences and decision to leave the medical profession, which you did 6-7 years ago now.
Not the postmortem.
No, the leaving.
Yeah.
And you've done quite a lot of things since then, which have got nothing to do with medicine. Now you've written this book, and almost, listening to you talk earlier, almost sort of, I can imagine you as part of, very, very much sort of part of a national discussion around this, almost a sort of, I don't know, a kind of campaigning role, an activist role within the public health sector. And it's sort of, reading the book, one gets the sense of somebody who's kind of gone. And listening to you talk now, it sounds like you've come back in some way. I'm just curious about where you are.
When I left, I really left. I wanted absolutely nothing more to do with medicine. But that's not healthy. So part of what I wanted to do with this book was to complete that chapter. And having done that, I feel like I'm back. I love the fact that I was a doctor. I love the fact that I had that chapter of my life. We've got our 15-year reunion coming up in November, and I'm on the organizing committee. I'm back in there, and I'm loving being back in there. And really the great reward for me in writing this book is that I feel complete about that chapter of my life. I no longer resist medicine. So I am back.
Mr. Mike Button, gentleman in green.
Maria.
Hi.
Judging, I haven't read the book, but
I think I can, judging from the back and forth questions, I think I can understand the frustration as to why you left medicine. But I'm actually from the background of quantity surveying, so I'm not clued up with the health sector, but I'm currently learning. But when I look at it in terms of my experience with my fellow graduates from UCT, like some of them have gone abroad. Like I've got one guy who works in Japan, and when we communicate, he seems to look at it more like the problem, the frustrations that we have on our side in South Africa is the advancement of technology seems to be a challenge. And when he looks at that side, he says if he would have studied there, he would have been very advanced in terms of understanding the environment. But I want to ask, would you say your frustration, would you say the level where South Africa is in terms of technology in the health sector, would you say technology has a huge impact in terms of the frustrations that impact on the interns? Or if yes, on what perspective would you say the engineers should focus on in terms of designing the technology that could make life easier for our South African doctors so that we can also advance in comparison with the other countries abroad?
I think
when you're Minister of Health, you want to jump.
Oh yes, I think the challenges are much more fundamental than that. You know, it's I mean, I imagine technology has a role to play, but that's the challenges are around poverty, provision of adequate facilities, adequate medication, enough personnel. You know, it's the basics. We need to get the basics right. So that's where the challenges lie.
That's even more basic than that. Because how can we treat patients with tablets if they were malnourished? I just came from work and I have the same feeling. Malnourishment, you know, to have permaculture gardens in the townships or in there, that would be healing. I tell my patients, Western medicine tries to reduce the human being to the 3 dimensions in just the physical form. And this is where the universities have to go forward. Quantum physics gives us a language to see that we are also these other bodies that reflect, that there is also the subjective experience, you know, and I think absolutely, we can start with the universities to train our doctors differently and bringing the other technology, but with that fundamental understanding that it's no sign of health to be well-adjusted, it's sick society.
Sure.
Can I just say we shouldn't be too unfair on the medical profession and treat them too badly, because I've been a management consultant in the Eastern Cape to the conserves who came through there, and basically we had to train people how to be a manager how to manage in a madhouse, because the supply chain was so dysfunctional and the operations that you had to operate in were so dysfunctional. And as a result of it, so basically all we could do with these people is say, and not one of them had been on any sort of management training at all. Yeah, they were in very, very important positions, and it is about management. So I said, management is the hinge on the door. It's not the door, but without a hinge, the door doesn't open. It's the thing that enables things to happen, and they needed that. And I did some work with the human resources people, over 400 of them in the Eastern Cape Health Department. Not one of them was trained in human resources. When they received a fax from a doctor like you to say you needed accommodation because where you were being placed, if they didn't understand it, they just put it in the wastepaper basket. That was their answer. And it is really a madhouse. And so what we did was to train people how to be a center of excellence within yourself. Even if you're the pharmacist there or something, you can run your department, but you have to learn to manage upwards. And as a result of that, we set up 15 different centers of excellence, mostly at rural hospitals, where doctors went back like these ones you've talked about, and open places. But I think it's a dysfunctional place. And many of the young people, for me, at my age, it was the most wonderful years of my life, was working with the Comserves. They were fantastic. the thing that saddened me was at the end, they would say, we don't work for fools. We don't work for Kentucky Fried Chicken eaters. And we're not staying, we're going. And so many black students were leaving saying, we're not fools. We know what is possible. And so it is a dysfunctional thing. And I found out that they had a thing called Project 5000. I said, what's Project 5000? We're employing 5,000 more people in the Eastern Cape. Can you imagine what that means? Absolutely nothing. It's the relatives of everybody and everything else like that. Didn't mean a thing. The nursing colleges have been closed for 5 years. The Eastern Cape hospitals won't recruit nurses from their own nursing college. They recruit them from the Western Cape. So I don't know about the other provinces, but I can speak for that. And it is dysfunctional. And unless you get that right, it doesn't matter what else you do. It can't work. Management is a key thing. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Hi Maria, I haven't read your book yet, but I've gotten it, getting my teeth into it soon. I'm a registrar in training at the moment, and I'm wondering just about mentorship, and if there were enough persons who were modeling to you what to do under difficult circumstances with very little resources and little time, and if that would have made a difference to your experience. I'm just wondering how I can contrast what you'd say with what I'm going through right now.
No, I mean, at the time, you get on and you do the work. And, you know, there wasn't any kind of formal mentorship. So you just did the best you could. I mean, are you saying that now you do have mentors?
Probably in a formal way, but it's not something that's codified with the knowledge of speaking to what the experience is like, knowing our social reality, resource-strapped country like ours.
There's people are waiting. The casualty unit is full. Get on and sort it out. Yeah.
One last question.
Hi. I'm another fellow classmate of Maria. And I'm working at the new Mitchell's Plain Hospital on the Cape Flats. Now, this is the newest institution in Western Cape. And for me, the problem we've always had as doctors is we accept massive responsibility at great personal loss, and we're not respected for that in any way. The greatest example, this brand new hospital doesn't have a single sleeping quarter for the doctors, doesn't have a tea room. This is the newest hospital in South Africa. So for me, if I could just see respect for the fact we accept massive responsibility, at the end of the day, that patient's life is in our hands. I had to explain through the whole procurement process to supply chain what a CTG, their role in the brain damaged baby was. So what, if you want a CTG that doesn't really work? No, but are you going to be responsible for that brain damaged baby? So for me, we are having to be managers, supply chains, clerks, cleaners. It's really not fair. If I can just go to work and be a doctor and heal my patients, it's not difficult. It's respect.
Thank you, Sam.
We never had the word about resilience.
Seeing that I was asked, I don't think. I don't think it's a matter of putting on successive layers of psychological defenses, because we have to do a job sometimes that is depersonalized, especially in an emergency situation. You have to operate like a machine, but the next minute you can be counseling somebody through an emotional issue. So we have to have that flexibility. We have to be able to put on the hard shell when it's necessary and take it off. And I think that's a particular skill. It's a mature skill that is difficult to acquire. And it's not just a matter of successive layers of resilience or of becoming hard and cynical and tough in a tough world. I think we need that flexibility.
So maybe there is one thing.
Sorry?
I'll say one thing.
Say one thing.
I just feel that your question wasn't really addressed? How do you survive? How do you preserve yourself, your sanity in a very difficult situation? And if it's possible, just to keep a little space open for yourself, for, you know, hopefully to debrief with your colleagues around really difficult things that you've been through. You could just step back and consider. It's also important for the patients that you think about what happened there, if something that maybe didn't go very smoothly, or somebody died, but also, you know, part of this medical humanities initiative, Art in Medicine, and I think it's incredibly helpful just to have a little gap open, if you can keep it open, to take these difficult things and write about them, or paint them, or go and play music, or dance them, or it really puts something back, because we're giving out. Not that our patients don't give us anything at all, but we need to put something back that's creative.